Thank you so very much, Marcin. And it is with great pleasure that we welcome back, and I'm going to let you explain the welcome back part, Minister Dowgielewicz, to be with us today. I could go through a resume that will astound you, but to highlight his work, he currently serves as the Secretary of State for European Affairs and Economic Policy at the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but he has spent a great deal of time in Brussels. He has served as an advisor to Pat Cox, the former president of the European Parliament. He has served as a key spokesman for the European Commission's International Relations and Communication Strategy. He has served Margot Wallström in the Cabinet of the Vice President and European Commission, and certainly has been most recently very engaged in the Council of Ministers. So we have a colleague who knows the inner workings of Brussels, and I hope will shed and share some light of those inner workings, particularly as they apply to the Eastern Partnership. But finally, let me just say, we are grateful for Poland's leadership of the Eastern Partnership project in close cooperation with the Swedish government. This is the type of leadership we need to see from Europe as it tackles these important issues. And we are going to hear now from one of the architects of that leadership plan. So without further ado, Minister, we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Heather was referring to my comeback or return to the CSIS because I mentioned to her last night that 11 years ago, when I had the pleasure and privilege to work for late Professor Bronisław Geremek in his cabinet, he sent me here on a short fellowship to CSIS with a few Polish suffers who are, all of them are doing quite well nowadays in politics and administration in Poland. So this was a very... Yes, CSIS is the school of Polish decision makers on foreign policy, apparently. Yes, it's a very good school. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. And I have to say I'm very happy to see that this Polish-American dialogue on issues that matter for both the United States and the European Union is being inaugurated. Poland is very much interested in the run-up to our presidency of the European Union, which will start on 1st of July next year, to initiate and to step up dialogue with our key partner, the United States. We are also very much interested in the context of the new architecture in the European Union, the new architecture that should provide the European Union with one single telephone number, as somebody used to say, somebody famous. Perhaps for the time being we will not have a single telephone line, but we'll at least have a switchboard, so that should help. But to say it seriously, we are very much interested that the transatlantic dialogue between the Union and the United States is seen as a vital part of our respective foreign policies, and we look forward to the upcoming summit in Lisbon between the Union leaders and President Obama. Let me say a few. I will mention. I mean, my remarks I can divide into 3 points. Basically, I want to tell you a few words about the context in which the Eastern Partnership was born and still exists. Secondly, I want to tell you a bit about what the Eastern Partnership entails, of course, without going too much into technical details, but we can come to that if you wish during the discussions. And thirdly, I want to say what next we can expect for Eastern Partnership, what would be the future of Eastern Partnership. Now, since I have about, well, I should finish in 7 minutes, I will not do that, but let's say 12 minutes, if you allow me.
All Deputy Foreign Ministers can take as long as they like.
Okay, okay, very good, thank you. First of all, about the context. We all know that the biggest success of the European Union has been its transformative power, so that the Union has been able to embrace new democracies and transform countries from Greece, Iberian Peninsula, to countries of Central and Eastern Europe. And this has been a resounding success, and even the most fervent Eurosceptics in London would admit that. So this is something which should be a lesson also in designing the project for partner countries in our neighborhood. We have, together with Sweden, thought back in 2008 that since the topic of neighborhood has become so vital, it was also vital because our friends in France, Spain and Italy thought that they had to construct a much bigger sort of agenda for the common neighborhood in the south, so in the Mediterranean. It was a very opportune moment for Poland and Sweden to come up with a proposal to develop a sort of new relationship, a new perspective for countries which are bordering the European Union on the east. There is one distinction that is being sometimes made between the south neighborhood in Europe and the east neighborhood. The south are the neighbors of Europe, and the neighbors on the east are European neighbors. That's a difference, and this is something we underline, although of course sometimes this is not a very popular assumption. Why Poland and Sweden? In fact, the project of Eastern Partnership, as it has been developing, was getting ripe during a very successful presidency, the Czech presidency, which helped make Eastern Partnership a reality. In fact, there were a few other countries that were very much interested in developing such a common agenda for Europe in its eastern neighborhood. But Poland and Sweden, I think this is a good duo. Why? Sweden, a country which is seen widely as the model of good governance, a successful economically, a very open democracy, one which scores best in various leagues on quality of life and quality of governance, transparency, and so on. Poland, one of the countries, the biggest of new member states, now currently the 7th largest economy in the European Union. This is a bit of statistical effect, of course, of the crisis, because some countries are sort of going down, and Poland is what we call the Green Island, the only country last year with economic growth, and now the fastest growing economy together with Germany in Europe in 2010. But nevertheless, Poland is a good example of successful transformation, a country which is very much interested in developing what we call the West on our eastern border. We define the success of Polish foreign policy by saying that if we have the West on both sides of our borders, we will be very secure, one of the most secure and best placed countries in the world. So those two countries developed a common agenda back in 2008 in a climate which was not very conducive to bold projects. The impact of the economic crisis was already felt, and it's still being felt. By the way, this crisis is affecting also our eastern neighbors very badly, and of course this should be, I hope it will be, part of our discussions as well today, because part of the international response has to be to tackle, in fact, in the short term and medium term, the effects of the current crisis in a way which would lead to successful economic transformation. There was also what we call the enlargement fatigue, or the fatigue with the Polish plumber. You know, the famous story with the Polish plumber in France that was supposed to invade the bathtubs of the French families, and that was supposed to overtake jobs from labor markets, from people in Western Europe. And of course, the same sort of fear, the same sort of anxiety applies to any openness that we can propose towards neighboring countries. And of course, this openness philosophy was not difficult to accept for some, and is still very much a fragile process and a fragile issue. We can very well see this when it comes to the discussion about future enlargement of the European Union, for example, to the Western Balkans. Then two other aspects that I have to mention when we talk about the context. Russia. Russia is a key partner for the European Union. Poland is one of those countries that is most interested in having a very good comprehensive relationship between Russia and the European Union. And of course, recent Polish-Russian reconciliation should be helpful in this, and should make everybody more certain about good intentions, and it should also help us to overcome difficulties that we have seen in the past. And this goes without saying that Poland has been open-minded about participation of Russia in projects of Eastern Partnership if Russia wished so. The last element, the last contextual element is the realization, and this is present in the conclusions of the last European Summit, the last European Council last week, which was the first high-level or top-level discussion about foreign policy. And one conclusion was very clear. Neighbourhood policy and neighbourhood is crucial for credibility of Union's foreign policy. If you read the text of the Council conclusions, and I recommend to everybody who is interested in European foreign policy to do that, because they actually, this time, they are quite short and quite readable. I recommend to you reading that, because it is also very clear about strategic importance of economic and social transformation in countries, in our Eastern partners. It is very clear about the need, for example, for Ukraine to progress on the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, and it's very clear on other elements which are crucial. And those elements basically form one clear notion that neighbourhood policy is the key to success. This is a litmus test for the newly born European external representation. Now, let me pass to the discussion, or to the element which is about the content of Eastern Partnership. Because if we wanted to make it very simple, and it is a very complicated and complex process, as always, in the European Union, we can make it quite simple if we say this is about political association, so enhanced political dialogue on issues from security issues to politics, democracy, and common positions on world issues, on the issues of common interest between the Eastern partners and the European Union. And here the talks are quite advanced with Ukraine, the talks are quite advanced with Moldova, and the Caucasus countries started similar negotiations in July this year. The second element, which proves to be the most difficult one, is the visa liberalization. Moldova is now the second country after Ukraine that started a visa dialogue with the EU in June 2010. Between EU and Georgia, a visa facilitation agreement was also signed in July. Why it is difficult, I don't need to tell you. The context of economic crisis is not helpful, but also visa openness on the part of the European Union requires that a lot of conditions are met. And those conditions, in case of some of Eastern partners, are not easy to fulfill. And even if they are possible to fulfill, it will take time, a lot of resources, and it requires a complete overhaul of the administrative capacity, border management capacity of some of those countries. One element which also has to be kept in mind is that visa facilitation is only a sort of is an element. It's a sign. It's not visa liberalization. It's not the same as visa-free travel, and this is certainly an element which has to be kept in mind, since the visa liberalization is the ultimate goal for those countries, and obviously this is something also which would make the European Union far more credible for the societies in Eastern neighbors. Thirdly, there is a very difficult element, which is the free trade talks, the deep and comprehensive free trade agreements that should be signed between the Union and the Eastern partners. We have to remember that Polish accession, Hungarian accession, Czech accession, it all started with free trade agreements. They may be difficult to swallow for the less developed countries in the beginning, but they are necessary part of the package if you want to become a partner closely linked to the European Union and perhaps to have a European membership perspective in the future. Because those agreements essentially mean that you adopt a set of norms, set of rules that exist in the single market, and there's no other way if you want to become a member state or even a close partner like Norway or Iceland in the future. This is, of course, also the most difficult element, as I said, because there are lots of vested interests. And we can very well see, for example, in case of Ukraine, that Ukraine, at the current speed, it would take 10 years before it signs such an agreement with the European Union. And, of course, this is highly unsatisfactory, and we hope it will be a reason for a serious consideration in Kiev. On the other hand, we can see cases like Moldova, which during 2 or 3 negotiation sessions achieved as much as Ukraine during 3 years of negotiations. So I believe there is a scope for fast progress, and this progress is necessary if those countries were to be considered in the future close partners of the European Union. There is also a large part of the necessary cooperation between the Union and those countries which is related to energy. And as we speak today, I believe Ukraine will become a member of the Energy Community Treaty. Moldova became a full member of the ECT in March 2010. There is also a lot of multilateral cooperation on the 4 platforms that provide assistance and technical advice on everything from border management to phytosanitary issues. A very important part of that is the people-to-people contacts and dialogue with civil society, and this is an area also where we hope the United States would be interested to take part, and the think tank community and civil society from the US would be interested to be present there. There are also other elements in those discussions in the multilateral platforms between Eastern partners and the European Union, where we believe the American partners would be interested to take part. This could be, for example, this could concern, for example, SME cooperation, regional energy markets, energy efficiency, prevention and preparedness for response to natural and man-made disasters, and also good environmental governance, for example. These are just ideas where the US could potentially be interested to cooperate, and we very much hope it will be the case. I should also mention, just to speed up my presentation, that the Eastern Partnership has grown now and become mature also with the help of European Investment Bank, which is the public bank of the European Union, which has provided a facility of 1.5 billion euro. It's a facility called Eastern Partners Facility, which is earmarked for financing of investments in Eastern Partnership countries, and this is on top of the money already provided by the EIB for the 5-year programming period. Now, let me say that what I identify in the coming weeks and months as a crucial test for Eastern Partnership is twofold. First of all, the elections in Moldova in November, where we very much hope for a democratic process, where we very much hope for the outcome of the elections, which would help Moldova to progress on the way to association with the European Union. And this will be also a test for the international community, whether we are able and willing to support Moldova in its transition. And I believe Moldova can become really the best example, the landmark of Eastern Partnership, a first country among the Eastern partners who could have a credible perspective one day to join the European Union. So it's a big test ahead of us in the coming weeks. Minister Sikorski will travel next week to Chisinau. There will be a meeting of foreign ministers from the European Union, so-called Group of Friends of Moldova, and Poland is very much engaged in helping Moldova not only financially but also with technical assistance, for example, on border management, and we think this is highly important. The second element is, of course, we have to understand that this is not a one-way street, the process of bringing those countries closer to the European Union. We can also see some backtracking, we can see some negative developments. I'm especially concerned in recent weeks to see the developments concerning freedom of press in Ukraine. We are concerned also to see, which I mentioned already, this perhaps a lack of political will to progress with free trade talks. This is quite important, and Brussels is observing this with a lot of anxiety. We have to remember that in the current media age, all the events and all the we are living in the global context, global community, and there's no doubt that any news about any country can be very high, can be very visible, no matter where we are. And in this context, of course, I have to say there are also encouraging signs in the age when whether you can sell your bonds is the basic criterion of economic success. We, of course, are satisfied to see and happy to see that Ukraine managed to sell, for the first time, I believe, in a couple of years, its government bonds, which is a good sign of progress in stabilization of its economy. Now, the last element, what next? First of all, we will inaugurate the meeting of Group of Friends of Eastern Partnership next week in Brussels, where the US will be one of the partners invited. And as I mentioned, we are very much hopeful that the US will become one of those countries that will be interested in taking part in concrete projects. There is also a forthcoming summit between the European Union and the US. I hope that perhaps, if both sides agree, the common agenda in Eastern Europe could be part of this discussion and could be an element interesting for both sides. Thirdly, we will have now a policy review of the European Neighbourhood policy. It already started. You can expect a Polish contribution in the coming weeks or days even. We will certainly try to strengthen Eastern Partnership. We will try to strengthen the instruments available for Eastern partners, instruments of technical assistance, financing of technical assistance from the European Union, because it has always been the rule that if you expect somebody to fulfill the acquis communautaire, the EU regulations, then you provide also concrete assistance to them. This was the case in Poland and other Central European countries in the 1990s, and it should be the case now among the Eastern partners. And we will have next summit of Eastern Partnership in Budapest in May. This is a very opportune, this is a very good setup or the very good environment in 2011, because first you will have the Hungarian presidency of the of the Council of the European Union, and then Polish presidency. The Hungarian colleagues have invited Prime Minister Tusk to be the co-host of the summit in Budapest, and Poland, together with Hungary, will very much like to work hand in hand to prepare the Eastern Partnership Mark II, or Eastern Partnership sequel, to make it even more better targeted to the needs of our Eastern partners. And we will, during the Polish presidency, provide for the first time an opportunity for meetings at the ministerial level between sectorial ministries. So there will be a series of meetings for, let's say, ministers of agriculture from the European Union and Eastern partners, for ministers of finance, for ministers of environment, and so on and so forth. This will be for the first time such an offensive of charm, and let's hope a mutual charm during the Polish presidency, which is certainly perhaps going to bring a more openness and more sort of concrete effects in this cooperation. I will stop here, and I'm sorry that it was so long. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking the Minister.